All right. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for having me here. I was just thinking about this. I think it was close to exactly 1 year ago today that I was asked, and it was the first week in my new position, to talk to Survey at this forum. And I dialed in remotely, and I didn't know a whole lot then. Hopefully you'll see that maybe I know a little bit more a year later. But Carly, I wanted to address your question, I think, and the Maxar question. As Jake said, we are working with HEO on working a process of how the selection will occur for external instruments. But it's kind of related to Carly, what you said. For the comm relay system on PPE, we already have Gateway in an astrophysics mission of opportunity that got released. So we are actively starting to put it in our SMD calls, because there is a comm relay capability that we'd like to utilize early, even if we can't mount payloads externally on PPE, because it would have to happen pre-launch. And as Jake showed, as Gateway evolves, maybe more into the phase 2, there'll be more opportunities to have externally mounted instruments as well. But we are leaning forward now, and we know there's a comm relay capability that PPE will have. So we wanted at least to let science communities know, and I think it'll probably be in the next heliophysics mission of opportunity, to enable proposers to utilize that capability once it's up. So, all right. So I'm going to give you an update on the Lunar Discovery and Exploration Program. And again, hopefully I've learned a little bit more over a year. So I'm not going to go through this. Jake showed this. I'd only point out that the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, which I'll go into a little bit more detail, is an integral part of this overall exploration campaign. A little bit about, I got to show you a little bit of a wiring diagram, but you'll see the 3 mission directorates that are intimately tied at the hip as we're planning this lunar campaign and on to Mars, with that Space Technology Mission Directorate, HEO with Jake, and some other folks, and of course, SMD. What I wanted to point out, and I said I wasn't going to use this, Barbara, but I'll give it a shot, is here is where I sit in my position, direct report to Thomas Zurbuchen. We have a huge staff of 4, including me. Our recent acquisition, Dr. Brad Bailey over there, and he's in the process of moving east. Happy to have him on board, along with Ben Bussey, and Jay Jenkins, a program exec here. We are responsible for really implementing LDEP. And not only do we work across the mission directorates, but we work across the science divisions within SMD as well. For instance, coordinating any input into the Gateway evolution, working with Jake and others in HEO to ensure that science has a capability scarred into Gateway. So this is really the portfolio of LDEP. I won't go into a lot of detail for each of these, a lot of word charts, right? But we're looking for the Commercial Lunar Payload Services to doing 2 deliveries per year. We're starting out with, right now we awarded 3, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, 1 to deliver next year and 2 in 2021. But we want to keep a cadence of 2 per year up. We're also developing the instruments that go on the CLPS missions. I've got a couple slides on that coming up. Viper Polar Rover. I think most of you have started hearing about this, but this is the in-house build of a rover, because mobility is critical to science to be able to go to several locations. And I've got a slide on that here in a little bit. We're looking also, though, that's an in-house build for one time. We're looking at commercial rovers opportunities as well, because we want to fly several rovers using the CLPS contract. We're also looking at long duration rovers. I've got investments in the out years to develop more longer duration rovers, up to including RTG type rovers. We want to be able to operate pretty much 24/7 if we can. That's in the out years. LRO, happy 10-year anniversary. The mission operations is now under LDEP, but we work very closely with Planetary Science Division, because LRO is still acquiring rich science data. But we're also using LRO to help characterize landing site for our international partners, and for our commercial partners, that's being offered to our CLPS providers as well. And then we've got small sats. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, but if any simplex calls that come in and are selected that are lunar specific, then we work with the Planetary Science Division to figure out how we want to move forward on those types. We are looking to do science on smaller spacecraft platforms. And then, of course, Apollo Next Generation sample analysis. That pristine sample is going to be opened up early next year. That came under LDEP as well, and so we're pretty excited about that. So more about CLPS. These are the 9 companies that were awarded last fall, and we are going to, like we have done already with at least one task order, we're going to acquire services using what we call task orders. And what we do is we issue the task orders out to these 9 providers. They choose to provide us proposals back and to accomplish what we've asked for in the task order, and then we award the task order. So the first transportation task order was awarded in May, and I have that on the next slide. We're also looking at on-ramps, and so very soon we're going to issue an on-ramp to bring on enhanced lander capability. Originally, when we started LDEP, we thought we would probably look at, in a year or 2 after the initial CLPS award, we would do maybe an on-ramp of some TBD type capability. Well, now we see that we have a need really to help overall the agency help meet that 2024 mandate for humans on the moon. We may want to take larger payloads earlier than what we had planned. So we're going to release an on-ramp, see if there are any interested industry partners out there that can provide larger lander capabilities early. And if so, they'll be then onto the CLPS contract. That doesn't mean they've been awarded a delivery task order. That comes afterwards. It just enables them to be on the contract and be able to bid for future task orders. So May 31st, the 3 companies that were awarded the first task orders, delivery task orders, Astrobotic, Intuitive Machines, and Orbit Beyond. And that's all 3 teams. We were together in the JW clean room after JW left, obviously. Those are the concepts of their landers there. So moving on to the instruments. So I know this community is probably aware we had 2 different ways of acquiring instruments, and we did this in a way to have instruments near ready or ready to fly for those first delivery task orders. We did an internal NASA-provided lunar payload call to the centers, and then we also did an external call to the community called LSITP, Lunar Surface Instrument Technology Payload Call. We are going to come up with another acronym, right, Sarah? We're working on that. We plan on doing future calls annually because what we want to do is build a robust pipeline of instruments to be able to fly on CLPS missions, and you saw my cadence of 2 per year. We want to move towards more of a PI-led science payload manifest for these CLPS missions. Again, we started this NPLP and LSITP process to really get things started, but we do want to move more towards PI-led science types missions where we have a suite of instruments that have been selected where they're going to achieve specific science objectives at a specific location on the surface of the moon. We're eventually going to get to that type of cadence as well. And we're looking for opportunities to fly international instruments as well. Had a lot of discussions with ESA, JAXA, ISRO. Lots of international companies or countries are very interested in flying instruments with us on CLPS. And we're also talking to them about flying instruments on some of their landing opportunities in the future. So here's the list of the NPLP payloads. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we selected 13 payloads. We're in the process of finalizing which instruments are going to go on which of the 3 CLPS providers that won the task orders. But it is a mix, by the way, of science, technology, demonstration payloads, and those that could help meet some of the human spaceflight strategic knowledge gaps. So we wanted to fly a combination of those things. This is the list of the 12 payloads selected in July 1st. which was the external call as well. And again, a good mix of science and technology development payloads. I think Chris mentioned he was selected on here with PVEX. So again, we're looking at trying to have a good mix of science instruments and technology payloads. So I talked a little bit about the mobility that we need. So this is our overall strategy. Our primary drivers, particularly for the Viper mission, right, is to get to the volatiles and start doing that ground truth. And so we're looking at delivering Viper by the end of calendar year 2022 in the South Pole region. And then we want to do it with long duration. We don't want to just do it for one lunar day. We want to do it for months. Along with that, I mentioned we want to go out, and we're going to go out with an RFI by the end of this month to canvass the industry and even look for what I'd say the non-traditional types to see if there are other commercial opportunities for rovers in the future, and international contributions as well. So in the interest of time, I think I'll skip through that. A little bit about Viper, some of the common objectives I talked about. We're looking for the volatiles and the spatial distribution, the horizontal and vertical distribution. And this is really a good intersection between the exploration for the human objectives and the science objectives. Just to let you know, I'm not going to go through this again, but the instruments that we want to take on Viper, NSS, which you're familiar with, I think, the Neutron Spectrometer system. Yes, built heavily on the heritage during the resource prospector days. Nervous. And then M-SOLO, which is a mass spectrometer that was originally part of the WAVES instrument, if you recall. We are not taking a GCMS, but we want to utilize the mass spec out of that to fly with that. And then, of course, the Trident drill as well. Real quickly, Simplex, I mentioned earlier. The latest call, Lunar Trailblazer was selected for Phase A-B studies. This is a really interesting payload, and we really want to see how this comes out of the Phase A-B studies. And if it does well and we select it, then we'll go ahead and fund it for development and fly it. We're looking at a high-resolution volatiles and minerals moon mapper, along with the lunar thermal mapper as well. So very excited about this. And then lastly, we've drafted a science strategy of the moon. It's in draft form because we're getting comments. We provided it to the NAC for comments, but we really wanted to have a good strategy laid out to do the science on the moon. Jake talked about how we're doing it with the human space flight. We're not going to just go to the poles with rovers. We want to go all across the moon. Jack Burns talked earlier about, on the far side, laying out a radio telescope array, potentially using CLPS to be able to do that as well, and doing science from orbit as well. And lastly, we've got a group, it's Sarah, Ben, Jake, and others are really starting to plan what science will be done on that first human mission. So that's really in the beginning stages, but science is a primary point of what's going to be done with the crew on that 2024 landing. So just so this community knows that science is right up front, primary driver for returning humans to the moon. And with that, I don't know if I'll have time for questions since I ran over, but yes? Okay.
That strategy doesn't work here.
Oh, good.
I know you have questions,
No
Tim.
problem, yeah.
Tim Glotch, Stony Brook University. First of all, this cadence of missions you're talking about is incredibly exciting. It's great to see all the great science that's going to be done. My question, though, is about participation in the broader science community. Larger missions like Discovery New Frontiers have dedicated participating scientist programs to engage people that are not directly involved with the missions. Is there any plans, or is there any room for engaging the broader science community in some of these CLPS missions with the PI-led instruments?
So as I mentioned, we want to drive towards the PI-led, right? And so we are working through strategies of when we want to issue the first task order where we'd actually do that, where we'd have PIs propose, say, a suite of instruments to go to a specific location. We're trying to find out what the right time of that is while we're still trying to jumpstart and get more of the commercial lunar payload services providers up and running, and at least try to get a good cadence of missions going, right? So we are working through that. We just don't have the right timing yet of when we want to do that, but we certainly are going to be engaging the community more on ideas on what kind of missions we want to fly.
Thank you.
Yep. Really, I guess they saved them all for Jake.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I'll be around today and tomorrow, so if just come up to me if you have other questions, feel free. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.